Have you ever known anybody who, no matter what they're going through in life, could always muster a smile or in some way, shape, or form make you laugh, or even though they might be going through complete and utter hell, they always seem to be able to throw out a positive? Well, I want to share a story about my friend Jeshua 2,000 years ago. And I, I want to share this story first, and then what I want to do is talk about the meaning of it. You see, in my regression, which if anybody who ever wants to hear that regression, it's a pretty powerful recording. You can grab your copy at johnofnew.com. In that regression, you hear me witness the crucifixion, but the memories that kept flooding kept filling in the gaps, and one of the ones that came was really interesting. They nailed him to the cross. Now, the cross, when I saw it in the regression, it did cross, but it looked more like a T with a little bump than a full blown cross. And if you think about it, carpenter wise, creating a joint, it would create a stronger lateral. So making it a cross is a very specific thing to do, but there's not necessary to put a large tail above. So they would just do it in such a way that it would hold. And then you always see the depiction of the cross with a little foot platform. And you're like, why would they put a foot platform and make them comfortable? Well, in my regression, I didn't remember it that way. What they did was they had the cross lying on the ground. They put him on the ground and they nailed him to the cross. But they put his feet on the sides of the cross and nailed in sideways. So his knees were bent, but they were on either side of the cross, which is very interesting because when they talk about crucifixions and the archaeologists talk about the evidence of crucifixion, the only evidence they have is a heel bone with a nail going through it sideways. So it matches the description of what I remembered. But here he's laying down on this cross, and they raise this cross up, and as they raise this cross up, it's the end of it slides down into a hole. There's a hole in the ground, and it's like a rock surface that they've chiseled this hole into because they replaced the crosses. They kept using the same crosses, and they would push him up, and as they would start to push him up, and then the soldiers would use spears, and they would push on the back of the cross with the spears to get it up. Well, and what would happen is the cross would come up, and then it would drop into that hole. And I'm there. I'm devastated. I'm watching them push him up. And it raises up, and it drops into that hole. And from the top of the cross, he gave me a look like, well, that hurt. And it was one of those moments like sharing a moment and almost a laugh about it when he was going through that. And the reason I wanted to share this story is because that moment, he wasn't thinking about his suffering. He wasn't thinking about what he was going through. He was thinking about loving me, sharing a loving moment with a friend, even though he was being crucified. He was up on top of a cross, and he gave me that kind of funny, thing that you would do to a friend, and to me that says so much about the man, because he understood that the loving element, nothing they could do to his body could stop the fact that he could choose to be loving. He could choose to be living that experience, and for me, it was such a simple gesture, but it hit me square in the heart, because it was like he was thinking of me and communicating with me from up there. Now, interestingly enough, I had no idea of this. John was the only one of the 12 who actually saw the crucifixion. The rest of them were all hiding in the hills, and John was there because the last thing that Jeshua said to John was, take care of my mother. Mother there is your son there is your mother. Basically, John took Mary into his house for the rest of her life. And so I was there for Mary to take care of his mother. And as they raised him up she dropped into that space, for him to look at me and give me that moment of just us being friends and us being in that space, it meant a great deal. It meant a great deal. Because at that point, I felt like I felt like the love that he emanated all the time, even when he was going through struggle. So the question I want to ask you, are you living the loving life? Are you looking at your struggles and focusing on the negative? Or are you putting out a positive? Are you putting out the feeling of something more loving to the people around you, to the expression around you? Because I look back at that moment, and it's a powerful, painful moment, but it makes me smile. It makes me laugh. Because it was like, oh, well, that hurt, right? He didn't say that, but that's how it felt. That was the energy he threw into that drop. When that cross dropped into that hole, it gave that big jarring action. That hurt. What would you have done? And the question I really want to say is, your experience is your experience. So are you creating your experience in a way that's loving, caring, positive, or are you choosing the negative, the fearful, and in a way that's probably creating an experience into your life that matches what you're believing? Think about that for a while. And I will talk to you on the next one.